Hello and welcome to today's webinar, the State of 911 webinar series hosted by the National 911 Program. My name is Stephanie and I will be your moderator for today's session. The webinar series is designed to provide useful information for the 911 stakeholder community about federal and state participation in the planning, design, and implementation of next-generation 911 systems. It includes real experiences from leaders overseeing these transitions throughout the country. Today's session will feature presenters from FirstNet and the state of Tennessee, Mr. Bill Hinkle, FirstNet Senior 911 Advisor, and Mr. Curtis Sutton, Executive Director of the Tennessee Emergency Communications Board. For more information on future National 911 Program webinars or to access archived recordings or learn more about the National 911 Program, please visit 911.gov. Feedback or questions about the webinar can be sent to national911team@mcp911.com. If you are experiencing difficulty with the WebEx application, please call WebEx Technical Assistance at 1-866-229-3239 and select option 1. Please note that all participants' phone lines have been put in a listen-only mode and this webinar is being recorded. To ask questions of our presenters, please feel free to take one of two actions. Using WebEx chat feature located on the right-hand side of your screen, enter your question at any time during the presentation and it will be entered into the queue. This feature is not visible while your screen is in the expanded page view. To ask your question live, use the Raise Hand feature to request your phone line to be unmuted and you will be called upon to ask your question. With that, I would like to introduce Ms. Lori Flaherty, Coordinator for the National 911 Program. Lori, please go ahead.
Thanks, Stephanie. It's my pleasure today to introduce our speakers. And our first speaker, as Stephanie mentioned, is Mr. Bill Hinkle, who is the Senior 911 Advisor for the First Responder Network Authority, also known as FirstNet. In this capacity, Bill is charged with serving as the primary point of contact to engage the 911 community in developing and implementing the National Public Safety Broadband Network. He comes to this position with more than 3 decades of experience in 911 public safety at the local, state, and national levels. I've known Bill for a long time, and if you need someone to represent 911 when planning the largest ever National Emergency Responder Communication Network, you'd want it to be someone just like Bill. His entire career has been focused on public safety communications and advocating for 911 callers and telecommunicators. FirstNet is really lucky to have him, and we're even more fortunate to have him with us today. So, Bill, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lori, and I genuinely appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about FirstNet and NG911, the future of end-to-end public safety communications. But first, a little background about FirstNet. The 9/11 Commission report identified the need for a dedicated nationwide network for public safety. The recommendation was supported by a coalition of these associations. So you can appreciate that a lot of hard work from the public safety community led to the law being passed through the creation of the Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act. And that happened on February 22nd, 2012. Next slide. I think it's important that FirstNet was created. I think it's important for you to know, that is, that FirstNet was created for public safety by public safety. The law gives FirstNet the tools it needs to develop a network that combines existing infrastructure with public safety's unique requirements. The FirstNet governance structure is unique. It consists of its own board made up of 15 members from various disciplines and backgrounds. They bring a great deal of experience and knowledge. FirstNet also has a stakeholder Public Safety Advisory Committee, or PSAC, that provides direct input to the board from a public safety perspective. NENA, APCO, and NASNA are represented on the PSAC. FirstNet has $7 billion in initial funding. The General Accounting Office estimates upwards to $50 billion will be required to build and deploy the network, so $7 billion is just a start. The Act requires that the network must be financially self-sustaining over the long term through user fees and leasing excess capacity. The spectrum is FirstNet's most valuable attribute that's dedicated to public safety. As you can see, FirstNet has 20 megahertz of spectrum, and FirstNet expects as many as 13 million customers on the network. Next slide. As Lori mentioned, as Senior 911 Advisor to FirstNet, my primary responsibilities include outreach and engagement with the public safety communications community. Now, FirstNet has already been working very hard to engage the stakeholder community. The creation of my position is just further testament to FirstNet's genuine commitment to ensuring that the concerns and the interest of the public safety communications community are being considered in the development and the operation of the National Public Safety Broadband Network. To achieve my goal, I've already been working with NENA and APCO and NASNA. We've also had initial conversations with Lori in the National 911 Program Office, the NG911 Institute, and the FCC's Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau. But just as importantly, I have been spending most of my time this year reaching out to the state chapters and attending state and regional events to help ensure that I'm hearing directly from the men and the women who actually manage and staff our PSAPs. I've learned a lot by arranging some formal focus group meetings with public safety communications and professionals like in Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Ohio, Florida, and New York, to name a few. Next slide. So what have I learned from my initial outreach engagements and focus group meetings? I have found that most people now understand that FirstNet does not replace or duplicate the need for NG911 IP ESI networks that connects the PSAP and that connects the public to the PSAP, that is. And on the topic of interconnection, as FirstNet develops a seamless and secure broadband communications network, FirstNet will be responsible for ensuring that it interoperates and interconnects with NG911 networks. FirstNet also understands that rural coverage is an important part of the development and success of the network. FirstNet is required to meet substantial rural milestones in each phase of the network development. Preliminary analysis indicates that FirstNet will likely be able to cover more than the commercial networks currently cover. And while costs have not been set, FirstNet intends to offer services at a compelling and competitive cost to attract millions of public safety users and to make FirstNet self-sustaining. The use of FirstNet services and applications will be voluntary. Next slide. Implementing the vision of FirstNet will provide a mission-critical tool for our nation's public safety answering points. One persistent PSAP concern has been the potential for information overload and the impact on human resources. The creation of FirstNet will actually help the PSAP to process, manage, and disseminate the flow of information coming into tomorrow's PSAPs to first responders. FirstNet will provide the vital network connectivity between the PSAP and the first responders, enabling a real-time delivery of videos, photos, and other high-speed data. And during large-scale emergencies, the availability of a dedicated FirstNet network will provide the PSAP and the public safety community with critical planning tools to use before, during, and after a disaster or other major event. Next slide. This slide illustrates FirstNet's understanding of how critical the integration of FirstNet and NG911 will be to achieving success for public safety. And as you can see, there are a number of mission-critical imperatives that we need to meet, and some of the challenges that public safety will need to meet. I'm particularly, as a former PSAP director, interested in the future of how our PSAPs will be managed and staffed and the impact that these data opportunities will have, whether or not they'll require specialized skills. Next slide. The rollout of FirstNet represents a number of shared goals and opportunities to ensure seamless integration with next-generation 911 systems. We believe the combination of these two advanced communications networks is the future of emergency response that will lead to new levels of operational effectiveness and efficiency in the delivery of emergency services. Next slide. This slide represents a visual representation of the 911 continuum from a call originating on the NG911 network to the PSAP through FirstNet to the first responders. The convergence of FirstNet and NG911 at the PSAP will dramatically enhance public safety communications, providing law enforcement, firefighters, and EMS with greater situational awareness. I've already stated the combined benefits of FirstNet and NG911 will also provide the PSAP and the public safety community with critical planning tools. NG911 and FirstNet are two separate systems, as I've mentioned, both sharing critical information to first responders and sharing common interests such as location accuracy, the validation and use of applications, identity management, network coverage, and cybersecurity. Next slide. FirstNet will ensure the safety, security, and resiliency of the network, including requirements for protecting and monitoring the network against cyber attack. In October 2015, FirstNet released a cybersecurity special notice, which outlined key cybersecurity considerations and concerns about FirstNet's design, establishment, and sustainability. Cybersecurity was a key component in the final FirstNet RFP. Next slide. FirstNet is real, and 5 early builder projects are providing FirstNet with key learning conditions on a variety of network-related issues critical to the future of the National Public Safety Broadband Network. In Los Angeles, the primary focus areas of the LA Regional Interoperable Communication System are secondary responder partnerships, quality of service, and priority and preemption. In New Jersey, the primary focus areas of New Jersey Net include deployable technology, disaster recovery, training, network operations center notifications. And in New Mexico, the primary focus areas include hosting a single enhanced packet core among multiple radio access networks, international border spectrum management, state and federal partnerships. In Adams County, Colorado, the primary focus areas of Adams County 911 include Band 14 device testing and demonstration access. And finally, in Greater Harris County, the primary focus areas are core migration, data analytics, rural coverage, special events, and LTE. Next slide. So how will It'll be accomplished by leasing access capacity on the network, utilizing the $7 billion in funding provided to FirstNet, and establishing user fees that are attractive and compelling to the public safety community, and realizing cost savings from the use of potential offerers' existing infrastructure and capabilities. Next slide. As you can see from these important RFP dates, given the size, scope, and complexity of designing and building the network, FirstNet is pursuing an aggressive timeline in support of public safety's needs. The goal is to make the award by this November and to have FirstNet substantially in operation by 2022. Next slide. Consultation meetings with each state are the most direct method that FirstNet has to make sure that each state's input is included. But there are other approaches that FirstNet has and will continue to use to ask for feedback from a range of important stakeholders in addition to the states. Public safety's input is critical to FirstNet's efforts and plays a critical role in the build-out of the network. These transitions include notice and public comment. FirstNet has conducted 3 rounds of notice and public comment asking specific questions about interpretations of the law and how FirstNet should approach its business. FirstNet seeks input from public safety users on what policies and procedures make sense for the system. In acquisition is going to identify partners to deploy the system. FirstNet is on track, as I've mentioned, to make an award by the end of this calendar year. Outreach and engagement, which is part of what I'm doing. FirstNet's job is to go across the country and to get folks engaged on what FirstNet is doing and take that feedback to the rest of the FirstNet team. The PSAC, the 42 members of the PSAC, have an important job as well, working with FirstNet and the board, advising on policies and procedures. Additional inputs include the tribal nations. We have a team that is dedicated to working with the tribal nations, our federal liaison, working with our federal partners, NEPA, the National Historic Preservation Act, and our early builders that I've already discussed with you. And finally, state consultation is an ongoing dialogue to understand what each state's needs and requirements are. Next slide. FirstNet takes its statutory mandate to consult with every state very seriously and understands the importance of state involvement in the planning process. The governor in each state appointed a single point of contact and governing body to represent the state's interest to FirstNet. As required by the Act, FirstNet has assigned regional state consultation leads who work directly with the SPOCs to assist them in the development of the state plan. In 2015, FirstNet conducted 55 state consultation meetings involving a total of 4,000 public safety representatives from all levels of government. In 2016, FirstNet is focused on expanding outreach and education with state, local, and tribal public safety entities, and at the same time continuing to obtain state and territorial input to form state plans and network deployment policies, processes, and procedures. Next slide. The state plan process includes the process for how each governor makes a decision. Under the Act, the governor has 90 days to choose whether to opt in or whether to opt out. Congress recognized that individual states might wish to play a more active role in the design of the network. That is the other critical reason for the plan. The state plan process also needs to take into account the process a governor must go through to make a decision. Who needs to be involved? Does the legislature have a role? Who are his or her advisors on this? Either the state decides to have FirstNet build the radio access network, or it decides to build it themselves. It's important to recognize that the network is going to be built, and the decision is focused on whether FirstNet builds it or whether the state builds it. Next slide. As you can see, FirstNet has been working very hard to engage all stakeholder groups and the use of all available resources to help educate and to keep the public safety community informed. It's important that you actively get involved and participate in your state planning process by contacting your state point of contact and offering your services. Next slide. FirstNet's mission is to enhance the commercial services that you use today by ensuring the building of a network designed by public safety that responders can rely on. FirstNet plans to build a mission-critical network for public safety with these benefits. It'll be a dedicated network. It'll be a nationwide network dedicated to public safety. This is a key attribute of what FirstNet offers. Public safety will never compete with the public for access or capacity. Public safety applications are already in use by public safety agencies that leverage commercial networks for data needs. Examples of that include incident reports, inspection reports, security audit, campus crime reports, and many other checklists. FirstNet will be developing policies to support applications. FirstNet will have quality of service, priority, and preemption. The network is intended to provide priority and preemption so that those that need access can have it in real time as situations evolve. The network's high throughput is intended to allow public safety users to send event information to emergency rooms, dispatch, and command centers, as well as responders from other disciplines. The more information every responder has, the more effective the response. So situational awareness, of course, is an important element of FirstNet. Local control is intended to give you the ability to govern this in a customized way in your state. The network also has to be redundant, resilient, and available every time public safety needs it. These are the mission-critical goals that FirstNet wants to achieve. Next slide. Again, the last message that I would leave you with is to get involved. Offer your help to your state point of contact and your state 911 coordinators to help in the planning process in your state. And encourage your state APCO and NENA chapters to become more engaged to help identify key issues that are important to the public safety communications community. It's FirstNet's hope that by including your requirements in the acquisition process, the plan FirstNet develops, the network FirstNet will build, and the service that FirstNet will offer your agencies will be valuable enough for you to want to use it. Just like the numbers 911 represented the first nationwide universal number for the public to access for emergencies, FirstNet is the first nationwide network dedicated to our first responders. FirstNet is committed to meeting public safety's needs and to fulfilling your expectations. I want to thank you again for allowing me to participate in today's webinar and for your interest and support for FirstNet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hinkle. We'll start the Q&A portion of our session. As a reminder, to ask a question, please use the WebEx chat feature located on the right-hand side of your screen, or press the raise hand button so we can unmute your phone line. The first question I have is from Tom. He would like you to please expand on the comment related to the network being built by FirstNet or the state. It was mentioned when you were talking about getting the governors on board.
Yes, well, in the law that was passed by Congress, the states have the option of allowing FirstNet to build the network or the governor can opt out and decide to build the network themselves. There's a third option, and that is to do nothing. If the state elects to not opt in or not opt out, they are automatically opted in. I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm more than happy to elaborate if you need further information.
Thank you. Joe has a question. Now that the state consultation meetings are finished, are there any future events scheduled to engage with or update individual state stakeholders on the progress of the network?
The state consultation meetings have not finished. They will continue. The engagement activities by FirstNet, working with the regional leads, the engagement outreach, all of our resources will continue to support the state's efforts to develop a plan that they will ultimately deliver to the governor, who will then use that plan to decide whether to opt in or opt out. So again, we are still fully engaged in the state planning process and working with the SPOCs.
Okay, thank you. How can FirstNet's research on cybersecurity be applied for those building out NG911 systems?
You know, I really can't answer that because that information would be embedded in the response to the RFP, and I just don't have that information.
Okay. The next question I have is from Jay. Do you see the interface between FirstNet and NG911 being a component of the NG call handling solution or a sharing of the EZNet infrastructure?
Again, there's a lot of sensitivity around the RFP and how that interface will happen. At the PSAP, I just simply can't answer at this point. I'm sorry, but as soon as we have that information available, we know that's important to public safety communications, and we'll certainly make that information available.
Thank you. Who is working on the standards for the interface?
I don't know that anyone is working on the standards because we don't exactly know what the interface is. Now, I know that there are committees within ADIS and ESIF that have a standing committee that develop standards for interconnectivity. There are a lot of interconnected networks that will be part of the next Gen 911 solution, and just how all those will connect is, as far as I know, best detailed in NENA's I3 standard.
Okay, thank you. Next question. How do you anticipate managing expectations of the end users with regard to what FirstNet will and will not do for them?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the first part of that?
How do you anticipate managing expectations of the end users with regards to what FirstNet will and will not do for them?
Well, as I mentioned, we are committed to meeting public safety's expectations. The people at FirstNet, the team at FirstNet, they get it. They understand how important this design and implementation will be to public safety. We recognize that failing to meet those expectations is not an option. I'm extremely confident that we are going to meet those expectations.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Joe. Have there been any initial lessons learned from the early builder networks that have altered future network deployment or deployment plans that you can share?
You know, I don't know. We have a group of engineers that are working at NIST laboratories in Boulder, Colorado, that are assessing that information. There certainly have been some creative examples of things that the FirstNet network will allow law enforcement and other first responders to utilize. But I don't have any white paper or any data to suggest that our deployment plans or the building of the network have been altered due to any of the empirical data that's received through the early builder program. That isn't to say there hasn't been. I'm simply not aware of any.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additional questions? Lori, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Bill. I really appreciate your being able to be with us today. Our next speaker is Curtis Sutton. Curtis is the Executive Director of Tennessee's Emergency Communications Board, and he is a true Tennessee native. He lives in Tennessee with his wife and 2 kids. He was raised in Nashville. He's a graduate of Western Kentucky University and the University of Kentucky College of Law. Curtis has served as the Executive Director of Tennessee's Emergency Board since 2014, and he previously served as the board's Assistant Director and General Counsel. Curtis is going to be talking to us today about Tennessee's experience in terms of deploying NG911 and I believe the state's GIS standards. So thank you, Curtis, so much for being willing to share your experiences with the group today, and take it away.
Thank you. It's an honor for me to be here, and I appreciate the National 911 Office having me on this, and just really thankful I get to participate here. Just to give you all a little bit of background about Tennessee before we get into the details of our Next Generation 911 project. Basically, Tennessee is divided into 3 major regions: East, Middle, and West. We call them Grand Divisions here. Within those Grand Divisions, we have 100 emergency communications districts. Those are the 911 authorities in the state. They are considered independent municipalities, so we view them basically as independent cities within the state of Tennessee, and they are responsible for taking the 911 phone call and doing something with it. Within those 100 emergency communications districts, we have 142 PSAPs. So some of the districts have one PSAP, some have multiple PSAPs, just depending on how those districts chose to set up their 911 systems. So with that, I'll go ahead and get into our Next Generation 911 deployment. To give you a little timeline before we get into the project stages, in 2006, the Tennessee Emergency Communications Board, which is the entity that I'm employed by, contracted for a Next Generation 911 feasibility study, and that was completed in 2006. In that same year, we also obtained legislation authorizing the state 911 board, the Tennessee Emergency Communications Board, to deploy Next Generation 911. Around 2008, the Tennessee Emergency Communications Board decided to use a state network that was already created called NET-TN, or NET Tennessee, for Next Generation 911. That network was already in place. AT&T was the successful bidder for that statewide IP network, and the state board decided to carve off a portion of that network to run Next Generation 911. And that had to be done through a contract amendment, which had to be approved by a committee of the General Assembly. That was done in 2010. And also in 2010, the state board put out an RFP for a management company for Next Generation 911 to oversee the deployment, as well as operate the Network Operations Center for trouble tickets, and for state and to be basically a Tier 1 trouble center. That contract was awarded in 2011 to TCS. In 2012, we stood up the core of the network in NET-TN, and then began the deployment. The deployment of Tennessee's Next Generation 911 project is in 3 phases. The first phase was the core deployment, as well as connecting the wireless carriers to aggregation centers that would use to send traffic over the network. Stage 2 was to deploy the edge routers and PSAP equipment and then migrate wireless calls to the network for call delivery to those PSAPs. And then stage 3 is to move the wireline traffic as well as the VoIP traffic over to next generation 911, and along with that we have began the deployment of our own statewide alley database. So the statewide alley database is going hand in hand with the stage 3 migration of the wireline and VoIP traffic. We can go to the next slide, please. The state board, in order to get this off the ground, provided funding to the local emergency communications districts. We, of course, provided the funding for the core infrastructure through the Net 10 contract. Basically, we don't have a direct contract with AT&T, but we are an entity under the contract amendment that the Net 10 program office that is run by our what used to be known as Office of Information Resources, now known as Strategic Technological Solutions Office, runs. So we receive basically a bill from AT&T through the Net 10 program office. But we pay for all of the infrastructure for Next Generation 911. We also, in the initial basically sales to the local PSAPs to sign on to Next Generation 911, agreed to provide IP-capable controllers in all the PSAPs existing at that time. We're also paying for the Network Operations Center that's run by TCS, as well as the alley database. One of the things that we found that was important to the locals in order to get the buy-in for Next Generation 911 back in 2010, 2011, was the cost for the equipment and who would own the equipment, basically your controllers and your PSAPs. We received a lot of comments about that part of the solution at the local level, and the majority of the comments at that time were that the local districts wanted to maintain their own controllers in their PSAP. They wanted to have the same equipment that was there in the legacy world in the IP world, and they wanted to be able to select that vendor and maintain a relationship with that vendor through maintenance contracts and things like that. So the state board came out with $25 million to provide that equipment for each district. The funding formulation was done basically by setting a base amount for every district that would essentially cover a two-position PSAP, controller for a two-position PSAP, and then additional monies were added on top of that base funding based on population. And we broke the population down into 7 groups, I believe, at that time to provide equipment for larger controllers in larger areas. If we could go to the next slide, please. Presently, all PSAPs are receiving wireless traffic over the Next Generation 911 network. All wireless carriers were connected to the network in 2014, and we've been processing traffic over the network ever since. Wireless traffic only, we process about 260,000 to 280,000 wireless 911 calls a month, and that number seems to continue to increase as we start to bring on some VoIP traffic onto the network. We began the transition of wireline calls and the alley database in the early part of this year, and we are doing that in a specific LADA that we chose that had a smaller number of PSAPs available, and was an easier place for us to start that deployment. And what we are going to do is move from that LADA, which is in the Jackson, Tennessee area and West Tennessee, move down to the Memphis, Tennessee area, which has its own LADA, and then begin our deployment of wireline and VoIP traffic, or our migration of wireline and VoIP traffic east. So we'll be moving east across the state. through the remainder of this year and into 2017. We are leaving the traditional camera trunks in place for backup in case there is an issue during the migration of wireline and VoIP traffic. We have had a couple of instances where those camera trunks have proven valuable. Although those have been rare, there have been a couple that we've migrated. We've migrated a PSAP to stage 2 or stage 3 and then had to revert back to pre-NG911 for a host of different reasons. But like I said, those instances have been pretty rare. If we can go to the next slide, please. So this is basically a diagram of our next generation 911 network. You'll see that we have basically 4 aggregation points, Nashville, Knoxville, Chattanooga, and Memphis, and then we have a remote node in the Tri-Cities area. Nashville and Knoxville are also basically dual redundant cores of the network. So if one of those goes down, the other can still run the entire network. If something were to happen to Nashville, the Nashville CO, all that traffic could be migrated over to Knoxville and would be migrated over to Knoxville seamlessly, and then the traffic would continue to move around the state as needed. If we go to the next slide, please. The 4 nodes serve as aggregation points. Each carrier is required to connect to at least 2 of those to make it a redundant connection into the network. Some carriers have chosen to connect to more than 2. We've had a few that connect to all 4. These trunks are currently SS7 trunks, but we will migrate those to IP trunking in the near future. If we could move to the next slide, please. And this is typically how each PSAP is connected to the network. So we connect most PSAPs to the network through a T1, which gives them 8 virtual I3 trunks versus the normal 24 trunks. And eventually we'll migrate those T1s to a 2 or 4 megabyte Ethernet connection. And then once the PSAP connects into the next generation 911 network through AT&T at Nashville and Knoxville, then we'll connect to one of the 5 nodes. If we could go to the next slide, please. In order for us to make this project successful, what we found was we needed a statewide uniform GIS map. It was surprising to us that the state of Tennessee did not have an official map outlining official county boundaries and municipal boundaries. So we had to create that, and we did it using a system that was created that met the NENA standards. It standardized all field names and data formats for each emergency communications district. And it also allowed us to create a map that was more accurate than any other state map had been in the past. Our current map is basically being used as the base map for all other Tennessee state agencies that require an accurate and up-to-date map. What we did is provide grant funding for our emergency communications districts that focus solely on their GIS data. So we set milestones for each emergency communications district to meet to get their GIS data in our format. We call it the TIPS format, Tennessee Information for Public Safety format, which basically met all of the NENA standards, and then we had some additional things in there. But our first step was to get rid of any gaps and overlaps in our ESNs, which required us to negotiate with more than one ECD if we found gaps or overlaps with an adjoining ECD, and that took a little bit to work out those kinks. We ran into some jurisdictional issues in places and then we had to get some basically intergovernment cooperation agreements set forward to address others. We would have certain instances where a piece of property would be within one ESN, but would actually be located or easier to get to from an adjoining emergency communications district or PSAP that did not control that ESN. The second step was to get all of our center lines to 98% accuracy, and then the third was to get all the address points to 98% accuracy. So when the emergency communications districts met those goals, we released grant funding to them. If we could go to the next slide, please. So the information that we obtained through the districts was used to create the statewide alley database, and once we were at 98% accuracy with our address points, we began the work for the alley database. We have 6 million address points in Tennessee, over 6 million address points in Tennessee, and we are validating those against the traditional MSAG, and which used high-low. We're validating those on the actual address points instead of the high-low ranges for addresses. The state is covering the cost of all of this work, and the local districts will have access to that data at any time. They can pull their alley dips and not have to pay a fee for those. And then one of the things that's not reflected in the slide, I'm sorry I didn't include that, is how the alley database is structured. So we have basically an administrative alley that takes the data in from the emergency communications districts, and then puts it into our new MSAG. And MSAG is really not the best term for that, but it's the best term that we could come up with would still remind everybody what we're talking about. And then that administrative alley database, once it is checked and any errors are resolved, is transferred from TCS to AT&T, who hosts the production alley database that is actually connected to the emergency communications districts. That may not have been the best decision to split the alley database, but in order for us to maintain a secure connection with the ECDs, we needed that to go through the Next Generation 911 network provider, which was AT&T at that time. However, it was in the scope of our contract with TCS to actually do the work on the back end to make sure that the data is accurate. If we could go to the next slide, please. I know that's a lot of information to throw out there at one time. If anyone needs to contact us or you have questions about how we got to where we were with Next Generation 911, here's a list of folks that can help you. My information's on there, of course, as well as our general counsel and our chief of technology. One of the things I did want to go over, though, before we close out and before the question session began, is the challenges that we've run into with our Next Generation 911 solution. And it is essentially revolved around readiness, not only from the emergency communications districts getting their GIS data up and running, but also from CPE vendors. We've had software upgrades within our core network that need to be done that cause a not so insignificant delay. And we've had issues with the alley database records upload and transfer with the limited number that we could do when we first began the process. So some of the things that we've run into have been essentially outside of our control. But what we have found is that without having basically a central authority to gather the parties together to resolve those issues, the process just falls apart. So we've really developed a strong core team between the State Emergency Communications Board, the Net 10 Program Office, and then our NG911 provider at AT&T to handle those issues. And what we have done is made sure that we have continual communication through a next generation 911 deployment weekly phone call where we identify each of the issues and try to find solutions to those. And then we also have hands-on approaches with with the district CPE vendors and the districts themselves. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have. I don't want to run over the time here. But there are issues that have popped up during the deployment, and I'm happy to discuss those experiences with anyone. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. We'll start the Q&A portion of our session. Just as a reminder, to ask a question, please use the WebEx chat feature located on the right-hand side of your screen or press the Raise Hand button so we can unmute your phone line. The first question is from Audrey Kenny. Go ahead, Audrey.
Hi, good afternoon. Mr. Sutton, I mentioned, Pennsylvania is working on a similar project here with a next-gen 911 deployment for statewide readiness, and one of the things that comes up is about CPE. Are you using, I saw you mentioned that the local jurisdictions kept control and ownership of those. Are you having any problem getting the different providers to play well together, or is everybody kind of migrated in one direction, or how's that been working out?
Well, that has caused the longest delay of our deployment, is CPE vendor readiness. So the state, and what we did is put out that grant funding for those that equipment, the CPE equipment. However, it had to meet certain standards, or the vendor had to certify that it would meet our technical specifications. We had several vendors, and I'm not going to name any here, that certified that they met our technical standards. However, when we began the testing and deployment, it was obvious they did not. And so we've actually done quite a bit of beta testing for vendors, just simply going through this process of deploying next generation 911. It's caused the biggest delay of our deployment. We have several districts that are all using the same vendor that we've tested multiple times, and we have not had a successful deployment in any of those districts yet.
Is there one that rises above the rest, one that hasn't caused you any grief that you could share? Well,
I hesitate to name names, whether they're good or bad in this forum. But all of them have had at least a road bump. I will say that, and some of them have really not been able to pull their product together to get on our network.
All right, I appreciate that. And then one other question was regarding the routers. You said you're using TCS or Comtech, I guess now. Are they're doing your selective routing?
Well, no. TCS is managing the deployment. So they will actually be the entity that goes out to the specific PSAP to make sure that they get connected. They also plan the deployment schedule and run our network operations center, which essentially is a tier 1 trouble ticket center. The selective routing is basically done in the core network. Now the call handling itself is there's a separation between the way that the calls are routed and then once it gets to the PSAP, how it's handled there. So we do not have basically a statewide call handling solution in the network. In essence we don't have embedded 911 controllers in the network, but the call routing is handled under the core network through AT&T.
Okay, and then would it be okay? I'm the chairman of the technical committee for Pennsylvania. Would it be okay if I reached out to you separate from here just for some lessons learned?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. The next question I have is from Randall. How will Tennessee pay for maintaining GIS data going forward?
We will continue to pay for the ALI database, so that GIS work is never done. However, all districts were doing GIS before we started Next Generation 911. They all had to do addressing and things like that to keep their maps up to date locally. So that work will continue with the local emergency communications districts. We don't have additional grant funding for them after we met the certain milestones that I laid out earlier. However, the ALI database will continue to be maintained by the state board. However, the information that makes up that will come from the locals, and they will continue to do that work as part of their operations.
All right, thank you. The next question I have for you is, for your 98% accuracy measure, what are you using to measure against to determine whether you've met the 98% goal?
Okay, well, we had two different ones. It was 98% on center lines and 98% on address points. And I will be honest with you, that work was done through our Office of Information Resources GIS program. We contracted with them, I failed to mention this earlier, to work with the individual districts to do that. So they took on, they essentially dedicated one individual in each of the Grand Divisions of Tennessee to go to each individual emergency communications district and ensure that work was done. I understand your question. I don't know if I can fully answer it because I don't know how the basis was chosen for that 98% accuracy, because we essentially farmed that work out to another state agency.
All right, thank you. I know that there were several other comments and questions, but due to time constraints, we're going to go ahead and get those answers pulled together for you and email them out to the participants. I want to thank both Mr. Hinkle and Mr. Sutton for their participation. Lori, do you have any closing remarks?
No, I'd just like to thank both Bill and Curtis. We really appreciate your time and expertise. You guys have a wealth of information. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
This concludes today's webinar. We appreciate everyone's participation. An archived version of today's webinar will be available on 911.gov soon. The next seminar is scheduled for Tuesday, August 9th at noon Eastern Time. Our presenters will be Mr. Steve Lewis from the United States Department of Transportation, Mr. Thomas Conray, and Ms. Judy Doldorf from Fairfax, Virginia. We hope you will be able to join us. Thank you and have a great day.